Well, I am Ronnie Anderson. I've been known as Ron for a long time, but here in Sand Creek I'm Ronnie. And I'm the son of Arthur and Cora Anderson. I have had an older brother at the time I lived in Sand Creek. Alan, 8 years older. Muriel, sister, was 6 years older. And my sister Janet was about 3 years younger than me. And I think we all lived together at the corner of, I don't know, Bridge Street and something over there on the east side of town.
What years was that?
Okay, I was born in 43, October 24th, 43. And I lived in Sand Creek until I left for college at the University of Wisconsin. That would have been in 1961. And that's pretty much my, well, I came back during my college summers and worked in the creamery. And after that, I left and, spent my career at Caterpillar in Peoria, Illinois.
All right, Kenny.
Okay, my name is Kenny Nelson. Actually, I'm Kenny Nelson Jr. My father was Kenneth L. Nelson. We have always lived here all of our lives, my dad's life, his father, and his father before him. I'm the fourth generation that's living here in Sand Creek. I was born in 1945. My parents were Kenneth and Vera Nelson, and we've always lived on the farm just on the south edge of the village of Sand Creek, where it is now County M. I had no brothers or sisters. I went to school in Sand Creek, went to high school in Tech, went to college at the University of River Falls, but then came back and farmed here in Sand Creek, and I suspect I'll end up here in the cemetery in Sand Creek.
Yeah.
So, then tell us about life in Sand Creek.
Oh, life in Sand Creek.
We had some good times.
Oh, we had great times, yeah. Right from infant, I'd say. All my grandparents lived close. We visited them frequently. We had great neighbors. Grew up with Paul and Sandra Gilberts, Mike Severson, and Kenny lived not very far away. So I suppose in our infant years we all had birthday parties, arranged by our mothers.
Yeah, yeah.
I know for a fact that happened. What else can I say?
Well, I know in our case we both went to the same church, the
Right.
Zion Church
Right.
here in town.
Yeah.
And Ron was older than I by 2 years, but we both went to grade school together.
Right.
And other people at that age in the village at time would have been, and who we've already interviewed. One of those was Jim Amble.
Oh, yeah.
And others were, remember Wayne and Clyde Owens?
Oh, sure. Right, good. I'm glad you mentioned them.
And in town here, uptown, we were the downtown gang, along with,
Right.
with Paul, I guess.
Mike.
Although Paul was younger.
Yeah.
Uptown gang was Jerry and Gary, or Dutch and Swede
Dutch and
Dahlholm,
Swede.
and
Steve Smith.
Steve Smith.
Yeah.
The girls are Carol Sorkness and Karen Nelson,
Karen Nelson.
and Floyan Knowlton Loftus. Maybe
else?
that was it for the age, our age kids, I guess.
But both the church and school were central,
yeah.
to our activities. Our parents put high emphasis on both, and
Yeah.
Sunday school, Bible school, and of course all the school programs are important to everybody. And
Well, tell us about school.
school, well,
He was one of the smart guys. There was a bunch of us that weren't so smart.
we didn't have any kindergarten, as I recall.
No.
So we started school in first grade.
Yeah.
And
Who
I
would have been your
suppose-
first grade teacher?
Ooh, Mrs. Winstead, maybe? You remember her?
I don't.
I don't think I had Mrs. Farmer.
I had, my first grade teacher was Miss Sockness, but that would have been 2 years after you.
Yeah, okay. And later, who did we have in later school years? Well, we only had 2 rooms, so there were grades 1 through 4 in the little room and grades 5 through 8 in the big room.
And then what year was the grade school expanded? Do you recall that? It'd be about 55 or
I think that was
6.
after I was done with grade school. No?
Oh.
I remember it being
No, I
built.
don't- Yeah.
You know, very,
Oh, I
but I don't know. Let's see. 57. Yeah. Yeah, 5. Well, I don't know for sure. But I remember it being built and, but, you know, that was the little kids, right? Down
well,
in
the
new
rooms were,
addition.
but
Right.
then we got the gymnasium.
Oh, yeah, the
too.
gym. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. The
Yeah.
gym, yeah, the gym was there because I played basketball, not very well, but
Sure.
we all had a chance to participate,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
I wasn't any good either.
But it was fun.
Yeah. I
Right.
think Denny
a good time.
Knutson was another one that he was tall, so
Right.
he was having fun.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, the school activities were great. You know, recess was always wonderful.
Oh yeah. You could have snowball fights.
Oh, yeah.
In the wintertime.
Fox and geese.
Fox and geese, and there
Oh,
was a
yeah.
ball field, so we
Always
had
went out. Right.
for the good weather. You had a ball field.
I guess we always had in-school lunches, right? Mrs.
Hey.
Madison was the cook,
Yeah.
right? We had wonderful meals.
Well,
Remember
I
apple
didn't.
crisp?
I didn't. Well, that was good.
It was
I can
delicious.
mention some that weren't.
Okay. I've never been a fussy eater, so I think I liked everything pretty much.
But it was Martha
made.
Madison, and then I think after they built the gymnasium and the additions, then my grandmother helped Martha for a couple of years.
Okay.
Ina.
All right.
Nelson.
Yeah, sure.
And then Clara Smith came in
Right.
after that, but I don't know if she was with Martha or if it was Clara alone. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
The school, yeah, good times,
Oh yeah.
you know,
And
and,
but of course, we lived in town, so we could walk to school or
and
take our
yeah,
bikes.
We always did, right?
Yeah.
All 8 years, I think we
Yeah.
walked or rode our bikes.
So and that gave you an excuse to maybe stop someplace going up there. Well, your grandmother lived east of the church there, didn't she?
In later years,
In later
yes,
years.
right.
You could probably go over there sometimes. And my
Right.
grandmother
Right.
lived at the corner where the Senex convenience store is now. So, and my uncle owned the mobile gas station on that same corner, so
Oh, yeah.
I could stop there coming and going.
Right, get a 5-cent Coke.
Oh, well, I'd probably snitch
machine.
it, but
You got it free.
it was, well, Mike Severson and I would go in the back of the and grab warm bottles of pop.
I see. Oh,
And of course,
yeah.
Uncle Rodney knew this, and he would get after us, but it was in a good-hearted way. To me, it seemed like we did it
No,
more than once, but
Right.
maybe it was only once, I don't know.
you know, I live close to the mobile station, so it was a real treat to go over
Oh.
there with a nickel or whatever it took.
Yeah,
which
I think it was a
much.
nickel,
Right.
yeah.
And, oh yeah,
And then
Good
now, did you get your mail at the post office? Or
Yep.
yeah, okay.
box 33,
Okay.
all the time, you know.
So you had another reason to go to the post office,
Right.
which was located at Snort's all the
Yeah.
time, wasn't it? His
Yeah.
grocery store, post office.
Before Snort, it was Warman's, I think.
Yeah, Bob and Bertha.
Right. Yep. Well, we're getting away from school a little bit, but
Well, that's all right.
you know, you remember the modern Christmas Story movie about the kid getting his tongue stuck on the flagpole?
Okay.
I had a similar experience, and maybe you have had too, but on my way home from school one day, I stuck the tip of my tongue on the creek bridge.
Crick Bridge.
Yes.
'Cause that's a steel railing
Right,
bridge.
it was,
Yep.
yes. Maybe
Yep.
it still is.
Yes, it is.
You know, that's something one never forgets. Oh my, that was
I
awful.
remember something, but I don't know if it was you or if it was somebody else or me. But yeah, I guess we've all
Definitely
done
me, right.
it.
Yep.
And then you could stop also at, well, we mentioned Snort Store or Selmer's Everson Store.
Oh, yeah,
Or the
Selmer's,
Farmer
right.
Store.
Oh, yeah.
Or the restaurant.
Yeah, lots of stores, yep, right.
But
For a
nobody.
5-cent ice cream
Yeah.
cone, I guess.
And then you could stop at the creamery because your dad was there too.
Right. Yep.
I don't know how late in the afternoon they really stayed open because most of their things
Well-
were kind of in the morning, I believe. They're
Yeah, but sometimes in early spring or winter, the guys at the creamery would be there a long time.
Okay.
You know, because they have to wait for that last truck, which is often
Oh,
Minor
because-
Dallow's truck.
because
from
of the weather.
out
you know.
east,
Yeah.
Out in Mudbrook, they
Yeah,
called it,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
They'd get stuck, and oh my. So
Yeah.
Dad would sometimes have to come home for, supper and then go back because the truck wasn't in yet. So,
So
there were a lot of stories.
was your dad employed there most of his life
yeah.
then?
Yep, pretty much all his life. He had a butter maker's license,
Oh,
and in the early days they made butter
Right,
at the
right,
creamery, and then got away from that. And toward the end, it was just receiving milk from the farmers
Right.
and sending out to Jim Falls.
do you recall when the creamery burned? Is that when they discontinued making butter there? Do you know?
Don't know that. No, I don't know when that happened.
I don't know either.
When they discontinued it. But I remember my first visits to the creamery, the refrigeration unit. If you went down from the front and went into the room there where the equipment was
Oh,
that compressed the,
Yeah.
what kind of fluid did they use?
well,
Anyway, there was always some leakage,
okay.
and it smelled terrible and it made lots of noise in that room. So it was kind of scary to walk through. It was kind of a close aisle, and you
Okay.
walk through the equipment room there.
And there was
It was an
lots of
experience.
steam involved, I think.
Oh yes, sure. And the can washer.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it
they
was
hissed
coal
and
fired
banged.
for a while, and then it went to oil, wasn't it?
Right. Let's see, who was
Well, Carl
Peterson?
was involved with
Well,
that.
he was the fireman who
Yeah.
kept the fires going to make the steam.
Yeah,
Yep.
that would be Philip Peterson's father and
think so.
Lyndon Peterson's grandfather.
Right. Other employees were Philip Peterson, and Ben Keltner,
Right.
and Harvey Knowlton was a field man. Who am I missing? Oh boy.
Well,
Edgar Silt.
Edgar Silt,
Yep,
that's
Edgar
right.
Silt worked
And then
there.
in the office, it was, along with Ben, it was forever, it was Dorothy Coonrod.
Dorothy Conrad, yep, that's right. Yep. Nyla Swanson worked there
Oh, yeah.
for a while,
Yeah.
and probably others.
Well, didn't Muriel work there?
Yeah, I believe she
For
did.
a while?
Right. And then I worked there, 3 out of the 3 summers when I was going to college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was, I suppose the wages weren't much, Kenny, but it paid for, my parents weren't well-to-do, and they didn't fund my college, so it was pretty much what I earned during
Yeah.
the summers at
Yeah.
Falls Dairy that paid my way, with a few small scholarships, but it was the wages that I earned that
Yeah.
were primarily
And
the source.
really, that at that time, that was the biggest employer, I
Oh,
guess
sure.
you'd say,
Right.
in
Right.
the little village here.
Yeah. Who were others? The feed mill?
That,
You know?
Yeah, which was relatively
Right. Oh, but they-
low
yeah.
wage and
Right.
just had a manager and a few other guys, Jules
Right.
Smith and
Oh, yeah.
Jenny Holt and Gilbert's Motors had mechanics, of course, but they weren't nearly as big with a volume
Right.
of employees as they are nowadays.
And the farmer store was a going concern.
Well, that had a lot
at
of
the
people
time.
working
Right.
at it, yeah.
Yep.
But once again, I don't. As far as manufacturing, it was a creamery that kept
Right.
the village going.
Now, Selmer store, I don't think Selmer hired anybody.
Just Beatrice, his wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all he could ever do was count his single dollar bills.
Yeah, you remember that too. Remember
Everybody
to give you
remembers.
change?
And he would whip a dollar bill to make sure he didn't
Oh,
accidentally give you an
Right.
extra one.
No, oh yeah,
Yeah.
he held his money pretty close.
Yeah.
But you know, he had an airplane.
that
You know?
nobody's mentioned that before.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was pretty unusual
Well,
for
yeah.
at the time.
There,
you know?
it was Frank Prusick had an
Right.
airplane, and Selmer. In fact, the airstrip for Selmer was out here west of the village
Right.
on some
Just-
land that
yeah.
my father owned, and because my father took flying lessons with Selmer, and they were going to buy their first plane together.
Okay.
Come to find out that it had a cracked block, so Dad backed out, and Selmer went ahead and bought a subsequent airplane.
Okay.
And Dad never followed up after that, but that's why the airstrip was located on Nelson land west of the village here. And then Selmer gave me the first airplane ride I ever had, probably for you too.
I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you bet.
And then Frank Prusick built a hangar there as well, but then later he put another airstrip on his
Okay.
own land north
Yeah,
of the
north.
village.
Uh-huh. Now, do you have any idea how Selmer got an interest, or had he been in the military?
No, I
have no
don't-
idea.
Well, same with my dad. I don't know what bugaboo
What
got
prompted
him.
them?
I know they took
Yeah,
lessons in Chautauqua,
Okay.
but I don't know what prompted this. Maybe it was somebody they knew that was offering lessons
Yep.
after the Second World War, because that was the timing of it, that they took
Right.
these lessons.
I always thought that was a bit unusual for Selmer to,
Well, yeah,
to spend
Selmer
his income
was
on
tight.
a...
But then again, he was quite a fellow. He was
Oh,
a
yeah.
musician.
Oh, yes.
He played the violin. He'd drive Mike and I crazy because he'd practice that thing when we wanted to be doing
I
something
see.
else,
Right.
like watching black and white TV.
Right.
And Selmer saw away on that violin. In my ear, it was sawing, but
Right.
actually he practiced and he got pretty good at it.
Okay. Well,
I guess
Tell
we're
us about-
bouncing all over.
That's all right. That works
Okay.
fine. Tell about the phone system you put in
oh, yeah.
place.
I don't know whose idea that was. but-
That had to be Ronnie's.
Introduce.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Question was about
Oh,
the,
tell about the phone system.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we built a phone system
yeah,
between our house and Kenny's house, and Mike's was conveniently in between, so
That's
it
right.
connected the three of us. And we had, you know, regular phone line poles and phone wire.
and this was after the central system had been discontinued, so
right.
that other people had rotary phones, and so we just took it upon ourselves to
Yes.
have our own private little deal. But as it turned out, Selmer, once again, a little bit tight, never had a phone in his home. He only had it in the
Oh.
store. And I recall people figured this out, that if they wanted to get a hold of Beatrice
Okay.
by leaving a message, they could call either Cora, your mother,
Yeah.
or my
Yeah,
house.
I'd forgotten that.
And
Right.
then we could relay the message over to Beatrice on our secondary system
Yes.
here. But Selmer never had a phone
No.
in the home until he sold or closed his store. It's kind of hard to believe because that was
Yeah.
many years later.
How long was our system up before we just
Probably
took it
only,
down?
Yeah.
It was only a couple of years, I
Yes,
think.
it was only a couple of years.
And I don't know whether we were told to take it down.
No, I
or
don't know.
Whether we just decided.
I don't know. But
But it was fun.
we
doing
had
it.
overhead wires.
Yeah, oh yeah, right.
Planted poles. See, Ron was good at these things, and I think then he went on to other things and left us in the lurch, so we had to disband.
Oh, yeah. That was fun, right.
And then other things that you were involved with were, I remember, Boy Scouts.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had Boy Scouts, and in the bottom of the store, Snort store.
Snort store,
Right,
yeah.
right.
And I think Conrad Highland was a leader at one time, and I don't know who was before. Bill Nelson was
Bill
too.
Nelson,
Yeah.
yep, Harvey, Knowlton, they were all part of it. And some of my scout heroes at the time were Bruce Nelson and,
Okay.
and Knowlton,
Gene?
Gene Knowlton.
Okay,
They were,
okay.
and probably, I don't know if Dwayne and Glenn would have been,
I think they
Glenn
were
would have been
involved.
6 years older than me, so.
But I think they were involved.
Oh yeah, right. And I just don't remember, Ken, if anybody ever got their Eagle badge while they were in Troop 95 or not. I don't remember. But going to camp was a highlight of
At Camp
scouting.
Phillips.
Camp Phillips, yep.
At Hagen, Wisconsin.
Right,
That
yeah.
was
That was fun.
the big deal.
That was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that. One thing I didn't like so much, I think one of my first outdoor experiences with a troop was a 5-mile hike out on Conrad Hoyland's farm or something.
Okay.
Up the hills through there, you know.
It was work.
My mother, I remember saying when I got back that I so grouchy and tired that it was a terrible. But for some reason that, was a very important part of, my experience.
Had to prove you were tough.
Yeah. Wow. Those older guys pushed us pretty hard, I think.
I don't remember that particular one, but
Right.
Did you do any winter camping?
I don't remember camping, but we certainly went to a Klondike Derby.
there was somebody had made a sledge. What do you call
Okay.
it? Like,
Yeah,
I
like-
remember. Was that
My brothers.
they made that?
Like a dog sled.
Dog sled.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So maybe they went to
Right.
a winter camp.
Yeah.
But I
I
don't think
remember
we
going
did.
to one.
Oh, you do.
I think it was just a day activity though.
Okay.
Unlike more modern ones where they camp out, but I do remember going to a winter activity
Okay.
where they have contests
Yeah.
between troops and patrols and so forth.
And when you mention winter activities, other than Boy Scouts, though, it seems like a lot of people went sliding
Yep.
in town, right?
On your hill.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
behind the house where I live now.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And there was a fence at the bottom of that
Right.
hill, a lane,
Right.
2 fences, and you had to turn and go down
Oh,
that if
yep,
you were
down the lane.
able to go far enough.
Right.
You had to turn and go down that lane, or you'd get tangled up in the
Right.
wires. And somebody had hoods of cars
Oh, yeah.
and made toboggans.
Right.
And, well, you couldn't control them at all, but
No.
they would go fast.
Well, I think somebody had put some brake type things
Brakes?
on the
I don't
side.
remember that. I don't remember
But I
that.
do remember, I don't know if it was Sandra Gilbert's or somebody, laying low enough in the hood and then going under one of those fences, you
Oh,
know?
okay.
Talk about recipe for danger, and
Well, and we,
terrible things happening, but,
Yeah, and-
we were so lucky,
oh yeah, it could have been a lot worse. But then there was somebody, when you're talking about hoods of a car, but somebody had an old buggy at one time and was pushing that up and down the street. I can remember
it
that.
wasn't a winter activity.
No, it was just a buggy.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean,
but remember where we got that?
well, not really.
I don't know if Steve Smith and I got it, but it came out of, what was Martha Madison's son's?
Norbert.
Norbert Madison's dump.
Oh, now I remember.
And we got it out, we brought it to town, we used it, I think, to collect paper for the Boy Scouts. But when Norbert found out about it, he came after it.
Oh, well, back
Said,
to the dump.
Get that that old buggy back to the dump. But I have some great pictures of that old thing. I think when once Steve Smith is standing holding the
The reach or whatever,
for
pulling
the
it.
horse, right? Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, we'd push and pull that around. Oh, that was a
Well, yeah, I think I do remember that. You had paper drives for the Boy Scouts,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And didn't that paper go over to the old mill over here? I mean, as a storage spot? The old,
Don't recall.
I can recall just that old mill just
Right.
where Ambles had the mill.
Yeah, right down here.
Yeah,
Right, sure.
it was just full of paper.
Okay.
I don't know why, but
Right.
it was. But then maybe Jim's older brothers were in Scouts too, Jerry, and maybe that was why it got to be.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But we can't leave out one important type of fun that you and I and Mike had, and that was the motor scooters.
Oh, yeah.
I had an old Cushman, they called it a military style. Remember, it had no metal hooding on it.
Yeah.
Very bare bones. Kenny had a Cushman. Was it
Eagle.
Super Eagle or Eagle?
Just Eagle. 2-speed, 5-horse Eagle.
Right.
Yep.
And Mike had
An Allstate.
Sears Allstate. Right.
A red one.
And we'd roar around town on those.
And Harvey Knowlton was the constable. And, well, he was just pleasantly harassing us because we were underage. But,
Right, exactly.
well, you just run around.
In Sand Creek, you can do those kind of things. But I did get stopped by, you know, a sheriff's deputy in Sand Creek because I didn't have a stoplight on the back or a license.
Okay.
My old Cushman wasn't licensed,
Okay.
so I did manage to fix that.
Put a light on it.
Yeah, right. Little battery up front. And,
Oh, yeah. But there was...
that was fun.
That was fun, and I think eventually it wasn't... Didn't Rick Prusick even have one, maybe? I'm not sure.
Oh, Rick Prusick had a Whizzer, remember that? A more bicycle type with a
okay.
with a motor on it, a little engine on it.
Bicycle, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Yep.
And Rick had go-karts.
Oh yeah.
That was more fun than.
Yeah.
And we'd ride those through the woods up there.
They set up a track up there down by the river. Yeah. And
why we never killed ourselves roaring around through those trees, I'll not know.
I believe, I wonder if David Sorkness wasn't in on that. And Paul, I think that's probably where Paul Gilbert's got started in his racing.
Yep.
And like you say, Rick and, I wonder if Dennis, I'm sorry, Dwayne Hendrickson probably was involved in that too.
But I remember Rick more than anybody else.
Yeah, well, he's a little older, yeah.
Yeah. He had, you know, a 2-engine cart that would really go.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they buried tires as barriers around
That's a good thing.
around the tracks. You didn't run into a tree.
Well.
Yeah.
But getting back to the motor scooters, I have a great picture of us headed out to Old Maid's Bluff.
Oh,
to camp.
East of Sand Creek.
Yeah. Yep, Old Maid's Bluff, and we had our stuff on our motor scooters.
Well,
big expedition.
Sure, but it still would have had to get out and hike after we got there.
Right.
So, see, you were getting in shape when you were in Scouts, hiking up the hills.
Yeah, that was fun. That Old Maid's Bluff was quite a place.
And in fact, that would be back of where the Barry Loftus farm is now. It's those hills that were called Old Maid's Bluff.
Do you remember whose farm we parked our scooters at
It was probably the Willard Waterhouse, probably.
Willard I don't know for sure.
I don't know either. But that would be the sister of Mike Severson.
That could be. That's where we got our permission, huh?
What was Mike's sister's name that was married? Willard and...
Yep. Well, one of his sisters, Luana. But the other sister,
Darlene.
Darlene.
Yeah. There we go.
Right. Yep. So there were a lot of good times, weren't there?
Yeah.
With their.
But the other thing that kind of bothered me, and I think I've mentioned this before, that I lived on the farm here in town, and we farmed both sides of the river, and Dad would have me go out and maybe mow hay or rake hay or something like that. And as I would cross the river bridge, I'd see these other people down in the swimming hole at the park on a summer's day. And I'm thinking, well, this is the pits. I gotta go rake hay. These guys are swimming in the swimming hole. And it had a diving board in the park. It was a good swimming hole.
Yeah.
I can remember that. I was jealous.
Yep. But we had good times at your farm.
Oh,
the old round barn was always an attraction for us town kids. You know,
we had
play cops and robbers,
cops and
cowboys
robbers,
and Indians.
and there was
in the
a
barn.
track that went around
Oh, yeah.
on the ceiling of the
Right.
loft of the round barn, and it had ropes on that track, and you
Oh,
could
yeah.
swing around the silos on the, from one pile of bales to another pile of bales,
Yeah.
Tarzan style. Yeah, once again, you could have killed yourself, but
I don't remember your parents milking in the round barn. I guess I was a little too young to know.
that was in '52 that was discontinued.
Continued?
That's
Okay,
when we
so I
built
would've
the
only been
first
9
parlor.
years old, right?
Yeah, built the first milking
Built
parlor.
the parlor
in '52.
I came into the parlor one time when your mom was milking, and she said, "Get out of here." She didn't want me in the milking parlor.
Okay.
'Cause I would disturb the cows.
Yeah.
Oh, I can still picture your mom in her, her farm boots. and
Yeah, she worked right alongside
She was a
Dad.
worker. Yep, you
Yeah.
bet she was. Right. But getting back a little earlier in our childhood, Kenny had the good toys. He had the
Oh.
Lionel train.
Well, I had no brothers or sisters.
That's right.
Nobody
And
else
I
could
had-
beat him up.
And I had the cheap Marx train. So going to his house to play with the Lionel equipment was great. And he had a super erector set. You
Yeah.
could make the bigger things. It had a motor.
Yes, it
Yep.
did.
So
Oh,
those are things we enjoyed.
I didn't know I was spoiled, but I guess I was.
I think in those days you probably were. Right. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and
was a good
the
time.
Lincoln log set, I had
Oh,
one
yeah,
of those.
yeah, yeah.
But I remember going to your house because you
what did
had,
I have?
a little later, had a ping pong table.
Oh,
I thought,
yes.
well, that's pretty special. Wow.
Right. Yeah, it was good. Right. Oh, yeah. Fun times. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And then you go trick or treating, and because you're in the
wasn't
village,
that
it
good?
seemed like you could do
Right.
more things.
Right.
And then as you got a little older, you could do a little more
Yep.
foolish things with the Halloween time.
And the Halloween parties, in the basement of the
feed mill.
Feed mill,
to start
right.
with, yeah.
Right.
Because that was a fairly new building, and
hunting for pennies and a sawdust.
yeah,
It was a
that
great,
was it.
great fun.
Yep.
Yep, that was good.
Oh yeah.
And trick or treating,
Oh yeah.
while kids in bigger cities have to be careful. There's
Oh.
no
No.
room for concern in
No.
Sand Creek. You could go anywhere and expect good treats.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was that time you came to our house and snuck in the back door on Halloween and about scared everybody. You don't remember that, huh? You came over to join us, but you snuck in the back and, surprised us all at
Oh.
supper or something.
Well, I was a nasty
that was
kid.
good.
I was a nasty kid.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can remember being a nasty kid because I can remember once coming over to your place, and Nyla Swanson and your sister Muriel were going to go to the Ridgeland Fair, I think, and Nyla, I believe, had a '58 Ford. I don't know if it's hers or who her boyfriend was at that time, whatever.
Yep.
And somehow I thought I could ride along because you were going to go along.
Okay.
And I can remember Muriel being upset with, what do you want that snot-nosed little neighbor kid to come along for? Well,
Yeah.
does she mean me? And the answer was yes.
Oh, that's a memory that I don't recall. But growing up with older siblings is an experience I had, which you
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
But, I have fond memories of Muriel reading bedtime stories to me
Oh,
and
sure.
taking me. Maybe you remember we once had a little circus in Sand Creek. Remember
I
that?
mean, that came into...
Yeah. Remember, it was between the farmer store
Or in
and
the
the
bank.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was just
Set up
like a
there?
one-horse wagon outfit,
Right.
horse-drawn wagons, I believe.
But I was a little kid, and Muriel being 6 years older, she took me, so
Okay,
that was a memory that I cherish. And then Alan being 8 years older, I guess he was in high school when he had started an interest in electronics. So he took this correspondence course from DeVry Tech, I think. And he'd get all these kits of electronic
through the
things to
mail. Yeah.
put together.
Yeah.
You know, and I would be intrigued by these little multicolored resistors and
Yeah.
things that go into these kits, and I would, bug him to no end because I'd be fooling around with this stuff and he was trying to put something together.
Yeah.
So that was a good memory.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, good times.
Well, I think that's another thing. I was a little envious being an only child that I was lucky that I could go to these other places.
Sure.
Because otherwise I think I would have missed out on so much more. But
Yeah,
it helped to
right.
have friends and the siblings that they had.
Sure.
So I treasure those times. But
What
it
haven't we
seems,
talked about?
it seems like Mike Severson and I were always in trouble.
Really?
It's his fault. It was his fault.
Always his fault, huh?
Yeah, it was never my fault.
No, certainly not.
We would get out and fight with fists. We'd fight each other, and then the next day we'd be fine. But
Yeah.
I can't, crazy.
Oh dear, that's good.
I'm gonna have to check the timer on this for our length of tape.
Yeah,
Pause.
It'd be awful if we're going on without it.
that would be terrible. Oh, we have to start over.
Oh, it's still going.
Okay.
It says that we have about 20 minutes left on
Oh,
this tape,
wow.
but I've got more
It's
tape.
pretty long.
It's
No,
a
that's not
60-minute
long.
tape.
Okay.
Asking you other questions.
Yeah, if you've got some other questions.
Well, describe a typical day of school for you.
Wow.
You would
Describe a typical day at school.
Well, it started
At what year level?
Well,
or,
well,
in grade school,
in
huh?
grade school.
yeah, but that's 8 years, so
Yeah.
first grade could be a lot
But
different than 8th
it always
grade.
started with Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Sure, and later, I know when Hilda was there, it was,
Hilda Wentland?
yeah,
Yes.
you'd always have to say a prayer before you ate.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
sure.
dare do that in school now. And it seems like one time they started having a record player for the national anthem too, it seems like.
Hmm.
And then you always raised a flag. Somebody had to raise the flag in the flagpole.
Yeah.
Then what happened in school?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there were 4 grades in each room, so, our course, or whatever they were teaching would have had to take turns or
Yeah.
something, and
But you listened to those other things going on.
absolutely. I'm sure we learned a lot
Yeah,
just from
just
listening to
like-
what was happening, and, if we were in 4th grade, what the 8th graders were,
Yeah.
were learning.
Just like Alan helped you learning. And,
Sure,
and
absolutely, right. The typical day, I don't even remember, I already remarked about lunch and how I generally like that, hot lunches at school.
Mhm.
And I suppose some kids brought their lunch. I just don't remember that very well.
I don't remember that part either.
But generally, I think we got an excellent, grade school education.
Oh, yeah.
Often some of the top students in high school came from
Came
Sand
from
Creek.
Sand Creek, right?
So that was
Yeah.
wonderful. It speaks well of the program. The holidays, around the holidays, that was always special.
Oh, yeah. Because
Christmas.
everything was geared to get ready for
Right.
this. And so the regular classes were shortened and you had more time to
Right.
get all, and the curtain on the guy wire
Yeah.
across.
Yeah.
I guess,
Remember any of the programs?
what was that?
Do you remember any
Program.
of the
Christmas programs.
There was a fall program and a
What your
Christmas
parts
program.
were or anything?
Oh, goodness.
I certainly don't.
No.
I think I remember maybe church Christmas programs, Sunday school programs, maybe a little better than I do the school
Well,
programs.
tell us about that.
Well, we always had a piece or something to recite
They had
at the
to,
church program.
yeah, yeah.
And there were songs and skits, I guess. Boy, my memory
Well,
not
to
so
see
good.
now, in the town church, it was,
Oh, that's right.
you remember Pastor, well, first off would have been,
We had Pastor
Almquist.
Almquist.
And who was your confirmation pastor?
That was Pastor Gundale.
It was, okay.
Right. And there were only 3 of us in my confirmation class. Your cousin,
Jerry Nelson, yeah.
Gerald,
Gerald, yeah.
and the 3rd fellow
Was it-
lived south of Sand Creek. He was...
Was he a Tishman?
No. He couldn't walk well. He'd had multiple sclerosis or something. And Pastor Gundale would pick us up at Nelson's mobile station and we'd go down to his house to have our class. Oh, you'd probably remember his dad's name. His dad was a contractor. Man, I'm sorry, I don't remember what his, I might before we're done speaking here, but
Boy, I don't remember.
so there were just the 3 of us.
Okay.
And what about your class, Ken?
I had Pastor Gundale as well as a confirmation pastor. It would have been Merlin Madison, Roger Hanson,
Carol Sorkness.
Carol
probably.
Sorkness, Karen Nelson, Judy Sparby.
Big class.
It,
right.
it was George Keltner. There's others, but I can't recall. And we met in the church in town, in the basement.
Okay.
And it seemed like it was always cold in the basement. Confirmation itself, I really don't remember it, but I do remember Pastor Gundale. No, I take that back. I remember Evelyn Anderson saying afterwards, "Well, you said your part as if you meant it." And I guess I reacted, but I didn't know it. But
Right.
I think
Isn't
I
that
did
what
mean
you
it.
expect?
But so I guess I took it as a compliment at the time.
Exactly. Should have.
When I mentioned Evelyn Anderson, did you ever take piano lessons?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, she was a big pillar of the town church. And
Evelyn or Margaret? Evelyn?
I'm sorry, you're right.
Well,
Margaret.
I don't know. I just wondered.
Yeah, you're right. It's
Margaret was the bank employee.
Yeah, Margaret.
But
but they were sisters.
Oh,
Evelyn.
yeah. Yep.
But it was Evelyn who made this compliment, and Margaret gave piano lessons.
Okay.
For 2 years she gave me piano lessons, and then she suggested that I quit.
This kid's just not getting it.
Just not getting it.
That's good.
Oh.
Yep.
And I've regretted it ever since, because I love music. I can't read music, but I love to sing, and I wish I
Okay.
could play.
Oh, yeah.
But
Now, I think I remembered the 3rd person, or
oh,
I think his name was Taylor. Maurice, maybe? Taylor had a trucking.
excavating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
This would be one of J. Taylor.
J. Taylor's
his
son. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And-
We'd go down to their home and
Yeah.
have our classes.
That's where it was. Okay. Well, that Sharon, my wife's name is Sharon, and she grew up here too. She's a Loftus, and she went to Fox Settlement School, and grade school, and she would remember this Taylor fellow.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I guess that's the other thing that did happen. I ended up marrying a gal from this community as well, although she was on the west side of the river. She belonged to Our Savior's Church. And
You know, there was not a lot of interaction, was there?
Between the two
Between the
churches.
kids.
no,
You know, I've always thought about that. You know,
no.
there's 2 Lutheran churches, but they didn't
they didn't.
had a little difference in philosophies,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
and didn't-
I always said the Western Church was the high church, and the town church was just the free Norwegians, because we were always arguing.
Well, it was called Norwegian Lutheran Free Church
Yeah.
at one time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I really didn't have anything to do with the west side of the river either.
Right.
Although one of my best friends was Jim Amble, and he belonged to that church. But
Okay.
didn't get back and forth through that way.
Was it pretty much a separation by the river that resulted in people being in one church or the other? It seemed like it, but I don't know of.
Originally, it would have been.
Yeah, right.
Geographically, before the bridge and before the
Okay,
ease,
that would have made sense.
the
right.
difficulties of fording the river.
Right.
But it just seemed like, I don't know, on the church side. But once the bridge was built, well, there was commerce back and forth. But churches seemed to be separated. I don't know why.
You know, during our, I don't know, our teen years maybe, the old iron bridge was replaced.
Correct.
And that was a big deal in Sand Creek.
Yeah, and
You know, big construction project, and
we've kind of narrowed that down to, time-wise, somewhere around 52 or 3.
okay, all right. But what impressed me at that time in the building of the replacement bridge was the motorized wheelbarrows.
Okay.
They would load the concrete, you know, and then motor them across planks or something to the place on the bridge deck where they needed the concrete
Sure.
and dump it.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays they use these pumps that
Oh,
can
yeah.
pump extremely long length. And
Yeah. But you can see the engineering going on in
Oh, yeah.
Ron's mind at that age,
Oh,
of
sure it
wondering
was.
how these
Right.
things work.
Yep, right.
And now that bridge has been replaced as well. So here we are on our actually 3rd bridge in the village.
The other thing that impressed me, you know, talking about engineering and so forth, was when the county highway department came to town to redo a road.
Okay.
And that would have been your uncle's.
At
the time-
my dad's brother, Orville, was one of the
Highway commissioner.
supervisors.
Yeah, right. But they'd bring all these motor graders, you know, to town.
Yeah.
And the procedure for repaving a road is completely different
Oh,
at
yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
You know, they'd dig up the old blacktop and put down gravel, and they'd spread it out, and then spread oil over it, and roll it back and forth with the motor graders.
Yeah.
They'd typically have at least a half a dozen motor graders doing this.
Yeah.
And then finally they'd spread it out and have the galleon motor or galleon roller
Right.
pack it down.
Right. It was quite a
So that-
long process.
It was,
Yeah.
but for a kid at that time, you know, to have
Fascinating
all
to
that
watch,
equipment
yeah.
come to town,
Yeah.
you know, it was. I
And,
guess that led me to my career, but
Oh, well,
that's all right.
good.
We're not
That's
talking
good.
about that. We're talking
Well,
about
but that,
yep, but those are the things
I
that
think
influenced.
it's influenced you, yeah.
Absolutely did, right.
Yep.
And you had your own influences.
Yeah, I was told to go rake hay. I got to rake hay, so I stayed all my life.
Right. Yep, that was
Uh,
great. Yeah, good times.
Could you see the minute thing there on that screen?
Are there any other questions?
10.
Okay.
Sure. So, is there anything that brings you back to Sand Creek?
You mean physically,
Yes.
things that would bring us back? Well, certainly my parents, you know, lived
Yeah.
here after I had left for college and then my career with Caterpillar, but nowadays I have to admit, there's less to bring me back because, you know, many of my aunts and uncles have passed on, and
Yeah.
when I read the Sand Creek News, you know, I don't know a lot of people anymore that
That's
live in
right.
Sand Creek.
That's right.
And now Swanee is left, so I don't know if
we-
there will be any
We
Sand
don't
Creek
even have a
News.
Sand Creek column anymore,
Right.
do we?
So,
Uh,
but every now and then, you know, there's still things in the newspaper that, you know, I find very interesting. And but yeah, things bring me back. I mean, my nephew is still farming out here east of town, so you know, until he quits, we've got to come
some
back and
connection.
see him
Yep.
every now and then. So, but
Well,
you know?
I've always felt that Ron is a good example of someone who came out of Sand Creek and was well, lots of people have been a success in life, but Ron, to me, is a special fellow as far as making a career in Caterpillar and doing very well.
Yeah, a lot of Sand Creek people have
Kids
have left and really done well in their careers.
A little bit sad now to look around that we have so many families that have just simply not been able to continue here. So it kind of hurts the life of the community.
But I'm still, as we both are, proud to say that this was our home. Me at one time, you still are. So you mentioned to somebody, I came from Sand Creek, and they don't know where that is probably. And I say, well, it's a very small town, but we both know that it was how it influenced us and what a great place it was to grow up in.
That's right.
That's
right.
We did a lot of things that you might not be able to do somewhere else in a bigger town. It was good.
It was good.
So what changes have you seen in Sand Creek?
Well, the families are altogether different. I mean, it's changing of the guard in that regards, and the commercial is just about non-existent now.
Businesses that were once thriving are no longer here.
The creamery that Ron mentioned is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
The feed mill that Ron mentioned is no longer here.
The farmer store.
The farmer store is no longer in business.
Right. The building is here, but
the only business thing that's still here is Gilbert's bigger Motors
and the bank.
Yeah,
the banks.
And they're both prospering,
thriving. Yeah.
But there are far fewer businesses.
But there are some new. There's a craft business,
well,
right?
Yeah, but they're not. They are what I would call they don't employ many people.
Right. And I like to see the fact that the old school has been repurposed, I guess.
That's true. That's true.
And the wonderful things that happen there. Although I haven't been to one, this music. Was it once a month or something in the winter months? They have their fiddle players, Okay.
Yeah, you were talking about the jumbos. We could throw them in the river and watch them float down the river.
Right. Or take them home and slice them in half and make boats out of them.
Because they were huge. They would be a foot long, some of them.
Oh, yeah, they were big. Right.
Or we could have pickle fights. I remember doing that, throwing them at each other. Just not necessarily us two, but probably at Larry Hughes. He was one that I was always arguing with.
Why would anybody bring those jumbos in anyway? Knowing they didn't get a penny out of those, did they?
I can't believe so.
No.
But you were right in watching the sorting of those pickles is something. The different sizes, the gradings.
They dump them into the boxes, I recall, on the side of the machine there, and the little ones were I guess the higher value.
Right. Yep.
So it's important, I guess, for the growers to get out every day or 2 days to pick them.
That's where, once again, we'd have to ask the people on the west side of the river how they did that.
Right. The beans I have no knowledge of.
I do know my mother raised beans to sell, and I can recall some people coming in. The only one I remember is Clara Smith helping to pick beans. And then my mother had a strawberry patch over here on the west side of the river by, well, we called it the Arneson Farm. It's across the road from the present day New Hope Lutheran Church. And she expected me to help pick those strawberries. I hated that.
Okay.
And I recall her riding her a bicycle. She borrowed Roger Amble's bicycle to ride it the back into town with these cases of strawberries, and the handlebar came off, and so boom, all his strawberries went end over tea kettle on his bike, and she was not happy with Roger that he had such a decrepit bike, but whatever.
And my mother grew a lot of tomatoes. She'd, you know, and when they were ripe, she'd supply Snort with tomatoes for the store,
okay.
right? Like a nickel a pound or something she'd get for them, and I don't know what Snort sold them for, but not a whole lot more probably.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, I carried tomatoes down to the store frequently to, you know, keep him supplied.
Yeah.
Gardens always seem to produce a lot more produce than was necessary.
Yep. Yep.
I'm sure your mother as well as mine canned a lot of
Oh yeah,
garden
that was a
produce,
big
didn't
deal.
she?
You had to can everything.
Right. Tomato sauce and, you know.
And the beans.
The beans.
And the peas.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
and
Corn.
Corn and meat. My mother even
Nope.
canned meat.
I don't think we did any.
And
meat.
she'd make mincemeat for
Right.
mincemeat pies. And that I did. I do miss that. I like mincemeat.
Okay.
Okay. What else do we need to talk about here?
See, you mentioned some things we hadn't covered, but
Oh, you mean when I was missing?
yeah, when you were fixing up the camera.
Well, do you recall who the barber was when you were a young man and where you got your haircuts?
Yes, Dad would typically go to New Auburn for his haircut. And that's right.
Okay. That would have been,
Well, what was
that
his
would have been
name?
Hanson was the last name there.
Okay.
Oh, I can't recall his first name. Kind of an ornery fellow.
Right. And I don't know if there was a barber in Sand Creek at the time we were going to New Auburn. You know, and if we did, why did we go to New Auburn and not use a Sand Creek barber? But
Yeah, we used to go to New Auburn too, my dad and I. But then the commercial club in Sand Creek
Right.
built the barber shop where the canoe business is now.
was there any barber before that shop was
Well,
built? Anybody do it in their home?
A
or
lot
something?
earlier, there was a barber named Lyons, I'm told, is before our time. And I think his shop was up there next, where Bob Deitch's first radio and TV shop was.
Right.
Next,
Okay.
north of Selmer Severson store.
Ah,
Okay. The little telephone building is located there now.
Right,
But that
right.
original building, I believe, was the
sure.
barber shop.
Oh, yeah.
And then it became Bob's Radio and TV shop, which was another business that we haven't mentioned that was in town at that time, because in 1952 or whatever, that was the election year for presidential election, and that was something I remember from school, that we got to see the inauguration of President Eisenhower
right.
in
You remember
somebody's
where we did that?
homes that
Whose home?
had, well, it must have been Bob Deitch's and the restaurant.
I remember going down to Owens. Clyde
Well,
Owens?
he worked for
something.
Bob Deitch, so he would have had a television too.
That's the
That's
connection.
why.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I mean, different classes must have gone to different places. 'Cause,
Okay.
my class went to, I think it was Bob Deitch's home,
Home.
which was north of the
Home
Home
Oil.
Oil Company,
Right.
the second house north. And I'm sure some went to,
Yeah, we went down to
Others.
You know, it's quite a hike down to Owens'
yeah.
home, down across from the feed mill down there.
Yeah, and then there's the restaurant had a television, and I don't know where else.
Yeah.
But that was probably the first, well, for Sand Creek, that's pretty good to have any TVs, I thought, but I can remember that business of witnessing the inauguration.
Do you remember when you got your first TV at home?
I don't know what year it would have been.
No,
Somewhere in
I don't remember ours either.
middle 50s. That's all I can say. And all you got was Channel 13
Oh,
and
4 and 5.
4 and
right?
5 out of the cities.
Right.
That was it.
Yep.
And part of the time it was a test pattern on those channels.
Yeah,
That
we'd
was
sign
it.
off at
Yeah.
midnight or something. But yeah, ours was, you know, we had a blonde console, probably Zenith, I don't know.
Okay.
And
Ours.
yeah, that was a pretty big thing
Oh,
when
yeah.
that came.
But I do recall the days when it was at the restaurant. My dad used to like to watch boxing, and they would have, or maybe it was wrestling. Maybe it was wrestling more than boxing. And they would have it on Saturday nights in the restaurant.
I
So
don't remember
after
that.
chores at night, we'd
Okay.
go up there. I'd just go along and get something to drink,
Right.
orange pop or something. But
Really?
he would watch the fights on the television set at the
Okay.
restaurant. And somewhere in the 50s we got our own TV, but and all of this was over antenna, so we had an antenna mounted
Sure.
on the top of our house.
Yeah, we did too.
Did you?
Yep, yep.
And then I know Bob Deitch's business was building towers as well that you could mount on the ground, three-legged towers. And then somewhere along the line later, he built a tower in Sand Creek and kind of wired up some of the north end of the village with
Right.
cable TV, which is kind of innovative back in the early 60s.
I don't remember that.
There was a huge tower right next to the church.
I remember the tower, but
Yeah.
I don't recall, you know, homes being
Oh yeah,
hooked
there
up
were,
in
because
a
that's after
system.
he built his new house north or west of the schoolhouse. So then he had cable running up to his place, and then he wired up other
Okay.
people too.
Interesting.
What other types of entertainment did you experience?
Well, we created a lot of our own entertainment in Sand Creek, you know, just playing
Yeah.
and so forth. But there were some outdoor movies.
You're
Remember
right.
that?
Outdoor movies on a sheet, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. It wasn't really a park when, you know, nowadays it's the Sand Creek
Memorial Park.
Memorial Park.
Yeah.
Right.
Which wasn't there
No.
when we were kids.
It was just a weedy field down
Right.
there and a dirt road coming south from Zion Church, remember?
Right.
You
That
go
was
down
a
that
dead-end road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And down in there, they set up a screen and
It had to be in a sheet. I don't.
I don't know.
But then also once or twice I remember between the bank and the farmer
Yep,
store, and
yep.
maybe it's shown on the wall of the farmer store. I
Right.
don't know.
Yep, I recall that also.
But
Yes.
yeah, that park I believe started as under, well, the Gilbertses and the 4-H kind of working together to kind
right.
of develop that park. But as you said, when we were really young, that was not there.
No.
Well, tell us about 4-H.
Well,
Well, I
you
got
started before
I s-
me.
Yeah, I got in. You know, I don't know how old I was, but I think June Clift was the leader. Had been or
Quite
was
a
for a
while.
long time. I remember having photography, handicraft, you know, projects, electricity,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and taking things to the fair was always
Oh yeah,
great.
Colfax Fair and Menominee.
Colfax, yeah. Menominee was the big time, you know.
Yep. And
Got
I
to
guess
take
I
care.
had woodworking projects beyond, and maybe there was some photography in mine too, if I
Right.
think about it.
Didn't you have any dairy related? Didn't you take a
No,
calf or anything?
no, I
to the
never did
fair?
that.
No?
No, we, the type of a barn that we had, it just wasn't conducive to take care of individual animals. It was,
Okay.
they were just in a herd without individual attention, and it just didn't work well to separate out an animal for a 4-H project.
The springtime cleanup of the park was a big
Yeah,
4-H
That
activity.
was, yeah.
I don't know what else we did other than our meetings and working on our own projects.
I hated the books, I know that. The record books.
Oh, okay.
That,
Yeah, the record books are important, and
they're important, but I hated it.
you could display those too at the fair and get ribbons.
I'm sure I
recall.
didn't.
So, but yeah, 4-H. 4-H, school, church activities.
Yeah.
Were
Oh,
all,
another destination for activities would have been to bike up to Myron Park.
yeah,
Or taking our motorcycles. We probably did that
Yeah.
too. But I mean, when Myron Park still had the ferry.
oh yeah.
That was,
Yeah, there were great times at the island, weren't there?
and oh, that was fun.
Oh yeah.
And then there was a couple of years that Benny Myron had the steam engine gatherings here too, and that was something to, as an
Absolutely.
activity to go
Right.
to. So, did you ever get in on helping farmers with their thrashing or anything like that?
Yes, there was still threshing going on when I
Okay.
was a teenager. You know, there was a circuit.
Right.
You know, Norris Swanson, Clifford Nelson
Okay.
on that circuit,
Okay.
and somebody down south that I never went to. But yeah, I helped at Clifford's and Norris's. I remember once driving a tractor to pick up bundles, you know, and something about the brakes or something wasn't working, and I was fortunate. The tractor and wagon sort of rolled backward down the hill, and it stayed straight.
Okay. Yeah, that's lucky.
Oh, I was lucky. Yep.
I never got on or got into any of that. The dad had already gotten
Converted
out of
from-
yeah. He was had combine, and so we didn't need a threshing machine.
He had his own combine, or was
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
and a baler, so we didn't
Right.
get into that. When I was
When you were young,
when
you
I
would
was
have
young.
earlier. Yeah, sure.
When I was young,
that
I-
would have been right.
So
Yep. But
I just
at the
heard
time,
stories.
right, the steam engine had already been replaced by Harvey Hendrickson's Minneapolis Moline,
Moline
I think.
tractor,
You know, he had
yeah.
a big Minneapolis Moline that he used to power the
Yeah.
rig. So,
And then, do you recall that Arnold Gilbert's tractor, steam tractor, was parked over there by the feed mill as well? Because he lived,
ooh,
that was, because he used to do threshing, and he still
Okay.
owned it, and it was parked. That was
Really?
something to play on when I was a kid.
man, I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know whatever happened to that particular machine.
I don't know if Benny got that one too, or
Oh, I don't think so. Benny had his own. He had
Yeah.
two big machines up
Right.
there.
and Harvey Hendrickson would help with those steam engine.
running the steam. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Let's see, what else is there?
Things that we would have been doing.
As soon as we're done with this, we'll think of some, you know, something else that we should have.
Monumental experiences, yes. Um,
Well, for this interview, I think we're kind of coming to the end.
Could be.
what does Sand Creek mean to you?
Well, it means that it was a great place to grow up in. I
Start out with,
Oh, what Sand Creek means to me, or to us, you know, I think it was a wonderful place to be from.
Well, I'll agree.
And you say it's
And
a wonderful place to be.
To be, yeah.
Right. The experiences were wonderful. The education was good. You know, the good Christian people that lived here were, you know, gave us our principles, you know, that we live by. You know, there's a lot of good examples of,
Oh, yes.
you know, of upright folks that lived here that, you know, were wonderful for us to be around as kids. So that's what it means to me. Just a great place to have.
Right.
How fortunate.
Yeah.
Could have been born in the middle of a, you know, city somewhere.
Yeah.
You know.
I can't say how I was born here. I just was, but
Right.
Because of the farm, that's what kept me here. And I was fortunate to find a spouse, Sharon, that was willing to stay here as well, so that we were able to make a home here. And once you've made a home, well, it's kind of it just sticks with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have children here now that also, two of the three have made a home here. So with grandchildren now, I couldn't live any other place. So it's home.
And fellow, of course, I remember well was Ole Ingen, a bachelor who lived across from us, or between Kilda Wentland and Casper and Marina Field.
Right.
You know, and he had a blacksmith shop back behind his house.
Right.
You know, a blacksmith shop that was active prior to the one that was beside our house.
Right.
and Ole had a number of tools or machine tools in his machine shop, or you know, that were all run by a single cylinder engine.
You're right. It had pulleys and belts.
Oh yeah, shaft
over.
and pulley arrangements through across the ceiling.
I can remember that.
Yes, and you know, another great experience I had was seeing him start that old engine, you know, by turning that big flywheel.
It had a big flywheel,
yeah. Very big. And getting that thing running, and then getting all the shafts and pulleys in motion, you know, belts flying all over the place. So that was really interesting. And you know, as Ole got older then and could, you know, he didn't walk very well at all in his older years. And my sister Muriel would get groceries for him, you know, and
I
he'd
was wondering
always,
what happened.
You know, pay her well for going to the store and so forth and getting what he wanted. And I'd often tag along, but.
So you say he was a bachelor?
All the years I knew him,
Okay.
yeah, right. I don't know if he was ever married or not, but, you know, and then he had like one room in his house, or the front room, he had like, what do you call a day bed, I guess, that he would, and then a little kitchen behind there. And then the living room, which he never used, had an old pump organ.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you call it? Or you have to pump it?
Sure, with your foot, hand
Right,
pump.
right. And I don't know that I ever saw or heard that in operation, but it was always intriguing just to look at it.
Well, I'm glad you
remember
brought.
Ole?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do, and I'm glad you brought his name
Yeah.
up in reference to the 150th anniversary for Colfax. His picture is in their memory book of residents during, or I should say, after the Colfax tornado, which took place in 1958.
Right.
So apparently he left Sand Creek and moved to Colfax. I was wondering if you knew
boy.
about that.
I certainly don't. Did he move to Colfax? Maybe he was unable to be cared for at home.
Well,
You know?
perhaps. And it said he lost his home in Colfax under the caption under his picture.
Oh, in the tornado? He
Yeah.
lost his home? Nope, sure don't remember anything about that. But you mentioned, when we were not recording, you mentioned Minda Burling.
Well, I was wondering if there was a connection between Ole and
Yes,
her.
and she was sort of his caretaker, I think, and she might have been like a niece or something.
Oh.
But she would come up from Colfax quite often to visit him,
Okay.
and then she'd come by our house, and
Well, that
she was
may
quite
have,
a talker.
yes, she was a teacher too, I think.
Okay.
And I think perhaps that's how he would have left Sand Creek if
Right.
he was getting infirm and got to Colfax.
Very
That probably
likely.
is the
Very
connection
likely.
there.
But I don't remember him moving, you know.
And then
But he
after,
was one of the interesting
oh
community
yeah,
members.
yeah. And do you know then if the history of that blacksmith shop before Ole or?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No. I don't know if had been somebody else proprietor there, or whether Ole was the first. I
The
don't
blacksmith shop that was located next to your house.
know. Yes.
When we were growing up, it was the Hugheses, but before that, there was a Lang family in there. And do you know if your folks ever said who else? Perhaps when it was even built? Or?
No, I don't know that. But I know it was always a concern of my mother's because, you know, she would hang out clothes.
Oh.
And then the blacksmith would start up his forge or the double barrel stove that he used to heat it
Right.
in the wintertime, and then the soot would be flying.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a very nice arrangement to have a blacksmith shop beside your house.
Yeah.
And then I remember the time a team of horses got loose from a wagon out in front of the blacksmith shop, ran through our backyard and bent the clothesline post over.
Oh.
And Mother would say, "Boy, I'm glad our kids weren't out there when that happened."
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
That was a terrible thing.
When you mention your house, I believe it was moved in there, wasn't it?
I understand it was, and from somewhere out east of town, and I don't know the location
Okay.
from which it came, but my parents first lived in the house that Hilda lived in.
Okay.
And then when this house came into town, I don't know if they were the first residents in that house or not, but yes, it was moved in. But the history is lost to me.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Remember any other house movings that occurred in Sand Creek while we were kids?
House movings.
Yeah, any house that moved in or out?
Well, where
I know it happened, but
where Mike Goodremote lives now, across from Garfield and Anna Gilbert's
oh yeah,
new house.
yes,
That two-story building was brought in from out west of town here. Larson, Ludwig Larson.
yeah.
That was moved in.
And Ludwig lived right next to that, or was that his house?
That was his house.
Oh, okay, all right.
That was his house.
Right.
And then the little house beside that was moved in, but I don't know where it came from. The one that who's there now? Can't remember. I can recall when Rudolph Paulson's house was built, same time as Garfield Gilbert's house was built, back there along the creek. Before that, Paul and Garfield and Anna and Sandra had lived next to you in the lower end of Sand Creek. So there was uptown and there was a downtown in Sand Creek.
How about other interesting individuals?
Well, the fellow that lived just south of Garfield and Anna's and Paul's and Sandra's, who was that? Across the street
Julius
from
Johnson.
Julius? I couldn't remember who it was.
Julius Johnson.
Did he have a sister or a wife? He was an older fellow. You'd just
Right.
kind of sit around and talk out in the
Right. Yeah, his wife lived there with him. He had a son who, I suppose, took over the farm where Julius had farmed earlier, but what was his name? Somebody will remember that when they see this video. But
Yeah.
Julius's son farmed.
And then south of your house was the egg station.
Ah, we didn't talk about the egg
No,
station.
we didn't.
Right.
So there was lots of
That's-
traffic going
that's
in and
an
out there too.
Important little, business in Sand Creek.
And that was owned by
Before it was the egg station, it was called the Woodman Hall, I
Woodman
understand.
Hall, and they had
Lots of
dances
activities,
and roller skating there.
Yep, right.
But when we were young, it was just this egg station that
Right.
Rudolph Paulson collected eggs
and then
there.
his son,
Gordon.
Gordon.
Yeah.
and they moved a lot of eggs out of there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Their trucks would service northern Wisconsin.
I believe it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was always fun to, my mother would send me over there to get checks, which were
Well.
eggs that weren't quite good enough to
Right.
send to stores,
Yeah.
had little cracks or
And
something
it
in
might
them.
be 22 cents
Oh
for a
yeah,
dozen.
a real bargain, right? So I'd go over there, and then that was another place that was interesting to watch, the grading and the
There was
Callan.
a machine that did it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Just like the pickle factory about,
Yeah.
and eggs would move along and they'd drop down and depending on their weight.
That's right. That's right.
So,
And then we
and
mentioned.
it was always dark in there, of course.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah.
candled the eggs.
I think they had paper over the glass of the
Or
windows.
they did, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They must have had
couple ladies
refrigerator.
working behind.
They must have had coolers of some kind. Or
yeah, I
maybe
would
they
think.
weren't there long enough. I don't know. I can't remember that
I
part.
don't remember coolers, but the trucks could back in from the north end of the building and be loaded up.
And then when we were talking, another little one we mentioned earlier about Bob Deach, and the fellow that helped him was Carl Owens, and he lived across from the feed mill,
Right.
Kitty Corner.
Right.
But he helped build these tri-legged towers. He used to weld them together there.
At his home?
At his home, yeah, I can remember that.
Okay.
And there was a big elm tree on the north side of their house.
Yes. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, and they cut.
I want to get rid of that.
They
right?
wanted to get, and they cut the tree off. So they
Yeah.
had the stump, this
Yeah,
big stump.
yeah.
What do you recall about that?
They blew it right out of the ground.
With dynamite.
You know what? They covered the stump with something.
With
Remember that?
mattresses.
Mattresses.
And I think our
Where did the mattress end up?
the ticking was all over the power lines, up and down Main
Yeah.
Street, and the stump was still there. But I think
was
Arnold
exciting.
Gilbert's was one of the engineers for that, and it didn't work at all.
I don't remember it not working, but I do remember the explosion and the mattress pieces.
All over the power lines.
Yeah.
That stump was still there. Well, it blew a part of it out because it went through the eave of the overhang of the house.
Okay. Oh yeah, that was an experience.
What are your recollections of Juno and
Juno
Carol
Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Juno had this neat little woodworking shop behind his house.
Yes, he did.
But Juno was a staunch Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he was influential in my brother Alan becoming a staunch Democrat
Really?
also. Yes.
Huh.
They had lots of conversations when Alan was home
Well,
before
that's something.
he went off to college and ended up on the East Coast. But oh yeah, Juno was strongly.
And then
But to see what he did in his wood shop was
Right.
another very interesting place.
he
And
made bowls
Oh,
and
yeah,
candlesticks.
oh, right.
And I first got to be town chairman. He made me a wooden gavel with
sure.
the turned wood for the handle
Right.
and turned
Oh, yeah.
wood for the mallet portion of it.
And wasn't that a neat little shop to go in?
Oh, yeah.
Sawdust everywhere.
Sawdust all over.
Oh my!
Uh,
And it was cramped.
Very
as I
tight.
recall it.
Yeah, very tight.
Right.
And why it didn't burn down, I don't know, because I'm sure Clarilla sent him out there to work and also to do his cigar smoking, not in her house. And why it wouldn't catch fire, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But another place he'd go and sit and smoke would be the post office, sitting down there at
Okay.
Snorts. He could get by with smoking his cigar
Yeah,
down there.
yeah.
And then before that, of course, he ran the old mill over here.
Okay.
This one I had
Yeah.
at the mill site.
See, being across the river, I don't know much about the mill, and
Well, that was his family that ran that.
I just remember it in its worst days when the floor was rotting out.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was a dangerous place to go
Yeah,
in, but
it was.
we went in anyway.
Oh, sure. More exploring. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Oh,
And then
yeah.
there was somebody else there that I was going to ask you about there in our little neighborhood. Who lived in the little tiny house north of, or I should say, south of Bud Hughes's? It was a little house.
Mrs. Hickok,
Boy, I don't know.
right by the
little house.
There was a bridge, a little bridge right there,
Yeah.
because in the spring the water would run.
Yep. Hickok?
Mrs. Hickok lived there. Old lady that I didn't know much about, you know. She's kind of a, I don't know what to say about it. Whether she was kind of scary, but you didn't see her much, you know.
Okay.
and that's who I remember living there.
Okay,
She was right beside Philip Peterson.
right.
Right.
I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Later, there was Mrs. Paul Gaylor lived there. She was
Okay.
a friend of my grandmother Ina's, and so I can recall that.
Tell us about the birthday club. Who was in the birthday
Oh,
club?
when we were off camera, we were talking about this birthday club of elderly ladies in Sand Creek. Lil Teets, Ina Nelson, Clarella Johnson, Mrs. Juno Johnson, Martha Madison.
I don't know anything about that. Apparently, my
Ida
mother wasn't one of the chosen.
Well, these were older ladies.
Oh,
These are all.
old
These are a generation older.
Yeah.
Ida
right.
Nelson,
Right.
which would be the mother of Clifford Nelson.
Yep.
There was a Mrs. Lorenz, I can't remember her name, that would be the mother-in-law of Rodney Nelson. And see, Ona Carlson was in there.
No, Ona would have been younger.
Yeah, Ona Lean was not in there,
Ona
but Ona
Carlson?
Carlson was, yeah.
Okay.
Seems like there was one more, but they had a birthday club and they liked to get together and talk.
Whenever one of them had a birthday,
Yes, yeah.
it wasn't just a set once a month deal. It
No, it's just
only
when they
on
had
birthdays.
I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
I
You don't
guess.
know.
I wasn't in it, but I think
But your grandma was.
The spark plug in it would have been Lil Teets, because she was a character. She ran the telephone
Switchboard,
office
right.
switchboard for many years.
Right.
I can tell a story on her. I can recall when she was working at a night shift. This was in her home. That's where the switchboard was, which is next to the telephone office building presently today.
Yes.
And Mike Severson and I were in there, and we were probably 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. I really don't recall. But Ronnie Deach and Reuben Hovland come tearing up the street with some cars. Ronnie would have had a Ford. I think Reuben had a Rambler or something. Just tearing up the street. And Lil stood right up over the switchboard, which faced the street through the window, and she stood right up and said, "Those blankety blank fools are going to kill themselves." And that's the first time I ever knew an old lady could swear.
She did, huh?
She was very mad. But it just shocked me that to understand an old lady could swear. I didn't know that.
Huh. And the switchboard is an interesting place.
Well, it's a place
You know,
quite. Oh yeah.
Drop in and watch Ona or whoever was doing it, put the plugs in and out.
What was your phone number? The rings.
I don't know, 3 short and 3 long, or I don't think I remember that.
Our number was 1710, 2 shorts and a long. And then who was on the party line with you?
Oh yeah, Hilda and Rena were definitely on the party line. Of course, nobody ever listened in on
No.
At home, my mother did, I have to admit that.
Well, everybody listened in. Yeah. And we had Arnold and Gilbert's on with ours, and Connie Ever was on it. Arnold's daughter Connie was on the phone all the time whenever the folks wanted to get on, because she was high school age, and it drove my mother crazy. You always have to wait to get on.
We should, talk a bit maybe about things that were tragic in Sand Creek, and there were a few tragedies that we probably don't like to talk about.
Point them out. I'm at a loss.
A few people have been killed in automobile accidents.
Well, yeah.
What was his name? A good guy. We always like to have fun with him.
Ooh, Ted Labrisky?
Yeah, Ted Labrisky, right?
Yeah, that one I recall very clearly. Ted Labrisky was a brother of Diane Labrisky.
Yes, right.
And he worked for my folks on the farm, and he actually boarded at our place. I was in high school when he was coming home from Bloomer with his fancy. Well, he had
was it a Mercury?
He had a Mercury earlier, but this was a '56 Ford that he had traded for, and he was killed down on the Creek Bridge.
Down by 64.
Down by 64.
On Amber, close to 64, right.
And it was a tragic thing. and he was not much older than me, maybe
Right.
6, 7
Right.
years. And so he was a friend of Ron's and ran around with Barry Loftus as well.
Oh yeah. He's a really energetic
Oh yeah.
guy.
He had, so,
Loved to have fun. And,
Yep.
Yep. He's a
So
good guy.
that kind of shocked everybody when that
Yeah.
happened. Another one I recall that was a shocker was Dwayne Wingett, who was serving in the Wisconsin National Guard, the Red Brigade, I believe they called it.
Out in Washington
And
State.
he was out
wasn't
in Washington for training, and there was an accident. He was crossing a stream and lost his grip on a overhead rope of some
Yes,
type, as I
right.
understand, and they never found him. So that was another.
And how about the
Tragic.
shooting out east of town?
Well, yeah, I didn't really know the particulars of that one, but it happened east of town. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe-
I remember somebody driving up in front of our yard, and I think Dad and I maybe were out mowing the yard or something, and they said, so-and-so has just shot and killed, the other party. Rand's was one,
Yes.
and I don't know the name of the other, but that, those are the kind of things that you remember too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so there were some, and I'm sure there were some other tragedies that we don't recall, but,
Yeah, I haven't really put much thought into that
yeah,
part of this.
right.
Well, on that happy note.
Well, it's not happy, but part of our experience and
Yeah.
growing up in Sand Creek that
Yeah.
it shaped each of us in
Oh,
some way or
sure.
another.
I can recall when my grandfather died, grandfather Melvin Nelson, and he had had a stroke, and it was difficult for his last 2 years of his life, and he died in 1956 at his home, and the wake took place in his home, and then the service was in the Zion Church. And I recall that's the first time I'd ever seen my father cry, and that stuck by me that, I didn't know that my father could cry.
Right. And of course, in our family, the Deitch tragedy was close to home because
Oh, yeah.
Lenore was my dad's sister, and so that was pretty heartbreaking.
What was the Deitch tragedy?
Yeah, maybe you'd like to enlighten
Wilbur and Lenore and their son were all shot and killed by, I think it was an employee of theirs.
a renter.
A renter?
Yeah,
In
at
the
the trailer
okay,
court.
all right. For some reason, he was terribly upset with them about something.
And this took place in the what's called Willie's Trailer Court.
Still is called that, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is
Yeah.
down on Highway 64, pretty
Right.
close to Bloomer. So because they were originally Sand Creek area people, it really is difficult for that.
Okay, and what other memories do we have? There's sure a lot of them.
Oh,
All right, gentlemen, that's good. You have
it's
more
past
memories?
dinner.